So basically, there's no pleasing me. Hallmark, there's no pleasing me. Hey, welcome back. I hope you guys are ready because today we start Countdown to Christmas. That's right, Hallmark has entered the holiday season. Well, technically, they entered it the week before Halloween, but we're just getting into it now because I refuse to watch Christmas movies in October. I'm not entirely anti-Christmas early on in the year because I do decorate a tree for Festival of the Trees each year, and that we need to have our tree up and assembled usually like the first or second week of November. So we actually have to start planning well before November starts. And actually we did that yesterday. Our tree has been assembled. It has butterflies. It's gorgeous. I am so excited. So pleased with it. But it has put me officially into the holiday spirit. And now I am ready to take on the Christmas movies. In fact, I even put up this pretty little Christmas throw or holiday colored throw, wearing a holiday colored top to sort of bring it all together because I still have my pumpkins and my decorations. I'll probably take down my fall decorations this week and start putting up the Christmas ones because I had to pull them all out anyways, so might as well put them up. But anyways, yes, the first movie. And actually there's Countdown to Christmas and there's another one. I don't remember what it's called, but the Movies and Mysteries one. So they each have a bunch of movies. But this first one is Countdown to Christmas. So our first Christmas movie of the season is Jingle Bell Bride. So in Jingle Bell Bride, we meet Jessie, Jessica, Jess. I will probably use any one of those combinations of that name throughout when I'm talking about her. She is a wedding planner. And she has apparently a big, famous client. They refer to her as Renee, and they're like, big singer, you know, Renee. And I'm like, oh, if she just goes by a single name like Beyonce, she must be the indication that she's a huge deal. So she's a huge deal. This is a chance for Jessie to really make her career, and then she'll get a promotion to go work in London, I guess, something. I wasn't really paying attention to that whole storyline because I didn't care. But she's pulling out all the stops, working tons of hours to make this wedding go perfectly, to the point of completely neglecting her friends and family during the month of December. And in fact, the wedding, I think it takes place like just after Christmas. A date was never given. I thought it was like Christmas Day, but I get the impression now that it was more like the 28th or 29th of December instead. Because that puts the movie sort of in a different context. And this literally occurred to me at the very last scene. So now I'm thinking back on when I was watching it, if maybe some things make more sense if we move it up. Because I was thinking it was early December, and in fact it was late December. But anyways, unrelated. Jessie's running around doing all this crazy stuff for Renee. Renee's calling all the time, asking for all these things. And so she's going to go drop off her dress because apparently Renee changed her mind about the dress at the last second. And the impression they give, at least the impression I got, was that Jessie picked out the dress for Renee. Like, she tells her sister, oh, Renee wanted something different, something more traditional, so I have to go pick up the dress and drop it off for her. And then when Renee sees it, she's like, oh, yes, this is going to be perfect. Like,
yes, it's Renee's dress. She wanted a more traditional style, and I promised to drop it off. I hoped I had a little bit more time, but Renee lives all the way up in Scarsdale.
Hello. Is that it? Oh, let me see. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I love it. It's exactly right. And the veil?
After I recorded it and went back and watched it, now I'm thinking maybe it was just she had picked out like a couple different dresses, and when she was like, oh, I want the more traditional one, and then so I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect. Not that she hadn't picked it out herself, but still, I don't know, it kind of got weird vibes from that. So yeah, we're like 8 days from the wedding. And Renee decides, oh, hey, you know what would be great? Instead of those flowers that you're flying in from the side of a volcano in Ecuador. She originally had flowers that only grow on the side of a volcano in Ecuador being flown in. She's like, no, now I want an even more rare flower, the Jingle Bell flower, that is not in season except apparently in one place in the whole world, and that is in Alaska. Some little tiny town in Alaska has a Jingle Bell flower festival. It's in Tapissa, Alaska, is where these flowers are. And the festival, of course, because it's a small town. They have to have a festival. So Jessie makes the incredibly smart decision to fly to Alaska herself to bring back these flowers, even though the wedding's in just like a little over a week, and it's December. I'm like, girl, she's like, oh yeah, it'll be 20 hours round trip. And I'm like, ooh, you don't fly to somewhere it snows during the winter without plans to be stranded there or getting stuck somewhere in between. Because let's be honest, even though she's flying to Alaska, it's not going to be a direct flight. So she's going to be flying through other places and probably stopping in places where they also get snow, and it could also get delays and cancellations because it's wintertime. She's living in New York. She knows this. It's not like winter is a foreign concept to her. I mean, I can understand someone from maybe like Florida or Texas, somewhere where they don't have snowstorms on the reg, not taking that into account when they're flying somewhere. But oh, come on, Jessie, you're in New York. You know what happens when we get a snowstorm. So, yes, but she doesn't want to trust a courier because she didn't actually arrange to have all of what she needed sent down. Oh, because this is how it goes down. I didn't even explain how she calls to get the flowers. She sees the advertisement for the festival online, and then she calls up Tapissa, Alaska. She calls up the mayor's office, and she's like, she gets a receptionist or something. She's like, hey, my name is Jessica, whatever. I don't remember her last name. I need to speak to the mayor. The receptionist just puts her right through. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, granted, now that we've seen Tapissa, and it's a very, very small town, a population of 112 people, probably the mayor does not get a lot of calls. But I feel like in most towns, you would need to provide a reason for calling before they just automatically transfer you to the mayor. So I thought that was hysterical. I want to speak to the mayor. Okay, here you go. No, don't need a reason or anything else. Just put you right through. Oh, so so she talked to the mayor and was like, hey, if I could have some Jingle Bell flowers, I will pay for your musical festival or something. The music for the festival. It was, wasn't quite clear on what exactly the repayment was, but she didn't actually say how many flowers she needed. So that's why she's going in person, is because she figures they can't refuse her if she's there in person. She lands in Tapissa. They have a little bitty airport, which is kind of cute. Someone who was supposed to pick her up and bring her into town, but there's no one there. So she's calling the mayor's office, asking to find out where her ride is, when Matt walks in, and she at the time was like pounding on the vending machine because it hadn't finished rotating, and her candy had gotten stuck. Her cookies had gotten stuck, so she's banging on it. So he like steps in and she's like, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to damage it or anyway. I was just like, my cookies got stuck. And then someone at the mayor's office picks up because she was on hold. So she's like, oh, excuse me. And she's like, walks away from him. And when she turns back and realizes he's her driver, he's like standing there eating her cookies. And she like takes them back from him. And as far as meet cutes go, it was pretty funny, like misunderstandings and stuff. But I couldn't get over the whole, her cookies get stuck. He manages to unstick them and then proceeds to eat them himself. And then her being like, no, give them back to me, and then taking them from him. I mean, that was really funny. That just blows my mind, what was going on in that scene. Like, who does that? Yeah, so Matt is the florist, farmer, or whatever, who's in charge of the flowers, the Jingle Bell flowers. So he brings her back to the greenhouse, and he's like, all right, you know, so we need like, she's like, yeah, we got an hour before I have to get back to the airport to catch my flight to do my 20-hour round trip. Yeah, and so when they get to the greenhouse, he's like, all right, so 7 stems then? And she's like, well, actually, I need flowers for the bridal's bouquet, the boutonnieres, centerpieces, and an archway. He's like, so basically you want like all of our flowers. She's like, pretty much. So they like start to negotiate, and he ends up giving in. He agrees to like give her all the flowers she wants. So it wasn't much of a negotiation, and in fact, I liked him a lot for that. Like he was super nice, super sweet about it all. In fact, throughout this movie, he was super sweet, and I liked him. However, because they only have an hour to then get all of these flowers cut up, boxed, he makes her help. So there's a really cute scene where like working together, and then they have to get back to the airport, but things go wrong on their way back to the airport, and it causes her to miss her flight. Like, he stops at a moose crossing. There wasn't a moose in the road, there's a sign that it's a common moose crossing area, so he just comes to a complete stop. I'm like, you just slow down. You don't stop at moose crossings. And they get stuck in the snow, and they get out and they look at it, and I'm like, and how they try to get out of the snow, basically, it is clear that these people have never been to Alaska or know anything about. Actually, you know what? Aren't all these movies like filmed in Canada? Like, they're always using Canadians. They know snow. They know what to do when to get out, how to get out of snow and not get stuck in snow, especially such little snow. You know, throughout this movie, I'm just thinking, oh, well, they just don't know better, you know, these movie production companies. But I'm like, if they're in Canada, they do know. So what's going on here? Oh my gosh. But anyways, they get stuck in the snow in such a situation that no one who drives in snow regularly would ever get stuck in. And the way they try to get out of the snow is, again, not the way to get out of being stuck in the snow. But was just there so that she could miss her flight, which she does. So now she's stuck in town until the next day. And of course, it's such a small town, 112 people total, that there's no place to stay or anything. You just have to stay with friends or family or something. So Matt and his aunt, Mary, agree to put her up at the farm. Meanwhile, everyone is preparing for the big Jingle Bell Flower Festival. So the next day, Jessie goes back to the airport. The plane has been grounded due to maintenance requirements, and apparently the piece that's needed to repair the plane has been ordered, but it won't arrive for 4 days. So now Jessie's stuck in Tapissa, Alaska for 4 days. Well, it just so happens the Jingle Bell Festival is 4 days long. The first time I heard that, my initial reaction was like, hold up, what? This is a town of 112 people. That is a long festival for such a small town. I mean, I don't know what demographics look like, but you gotta expect that, you know, at least a quarter of the population's elderly and a quarter is small children. So, like, who are all these people that can support this massive festival? I mean, literally the entire town would have to show up to make any of this worth it. And how do they make any money? But that's all right. It was super funny because at one point, I don't remember how it happened, what it was she was doing, but somehow her name had gotten entered into the festival raffle, and the winner gets crowned the Jingle Bell Princess, not Queen, Princess. So naturally, now she's stuck here. They're at the opening ceremonies of the Jingle Bell Festival, and of course they pull a name out of the bucket, and naturally it is Jessica, who is crowned the Jingle Bell Princess. And it's pretty funny.
Please join me in welcoming our honored guest, Jessica Perez.
Go on.
No. Is Jessica out there?
She's right here. She's right here, guys. All right, let's go. Get up there.
Yeah, so I get her reaction. That's probably how I would react too. But then I would decide to just lean in. She, throughout the movie, she's always like, every time the princess has to like do something or be present for something, she's like, oh. I would have been like, all right, fine. I'm princess. I'm stuck here. I might as well just, and I would go all out princess and just embrace it. Embrace my newfound royalty. And now, because she's stuck in town for 4 days, she hadn't brought anything with her. Because she expected it to be 20 hours. You know what she brought with her? Work and a toothbrush. She had no change of clothes. She didn't even have her phone charger. She didn't even bring her phone charger. So now here she is in Alaska, and Matt's like, okay, we need to get you some warmer clothes and like, you know, some different clothes. So he brings her to like the general store, which is all really cute and quaint. You know, they got like, cause she's in there and she's like picking out a jacket and some boots, and then she's like, oh, well, I'm gonna need shampoo. And he's like, yep, here, has everything. And I'm like, it looked like a gift shop. So I've lived in a small town before. We had a little general store. Well, actually, it was one town over. Our town was too small for a general store. One town over, and it was chock-a-block full of stuff because you're trying to get everything that people need into a single little store. So, yeah, the store would have food. You know, you'd have your cans of tuna plus some thread and axes and live bait. It would literally covered the gamut, and it was kind of a hot mess in there. You had to know where stuff was in order to find it. So this store is not like that at all. It's very cute and quaint and aesthetically pleasing.
Just right here.
Thank you. Oh. Where's everyone? Matt!
Hey, Isa, what's up? We need your help. We need a few things from our friend here.
So now she has some clothes, which is a pity because I loved her red pea coat. I am a sucker for a red coat. I've had a red pea coat. I don't anymore. Had it for years though, probably like 10, 15 years. I wore that. Now I have this big puffy, like rated -100 degrees puffy coat with a big fur-lined hood. I mean, this thing, I don't even know it's winter when I'm wearing it. Also red, because I love a red coat. So I loved her red coat. But obviously it wasn't warm enough for the weather. And also, she keeps commenting on how quickly it gets dark. Now, I know that happens, you know, the further north you go. In the wintertime, the days are much shorter than it is when you're close to the equator. And vice versa, in the summertime, the days are much, much longer. And in some places, like, the sun really never sets. It just kind of, like, dips to below the horizon for an hour or so and then comes back up. So she commented, she's like, wow, we're really late. And he's like, no, the sun sets here at 4 o'clock. I was like, what?
How long have we been here?
Here the sun sets at 4.
In the afternoon? When's sunrise? Midnight?
10 a.m.
Wow. How do you guys get anything done in the dark?
Flashlight.
Oh,
And she's like, she's blown away by that. And I was like, it's December. It's basically, we're expecting it's probably like December 21st. So it is one of the shortest days of the year. And I was like, 4 o'clock? Now I live in New Hampshire. It is November. The sun is setting now just after 4 o'clock. Like that is normal for December. So if she came from New York, she would be used to the sun setting at 4 o'clock in December. Unlike in Alaska, it must set much earlier than 4 o'clock. That was a complete oversight there. Because yeah, she was like, oh, it sunsets at 4 o'clock? I'm like, girl, yeah, it does where you live too. This is not weird at all. So that was just funny because they kept making a big deal about the darkness. And I'm like, and then they get the times completely wrong. 4 o'clock. Oh my gosh. I wish I could be surprised by the sun setting at 4 o'clock, but I won't be. So then, you know, it's just, they keep going to festival activities, helping with the festival activities. Jessica uses her wedding planning skills to help with the setting up of the festival and the running of the festival. Especially like one of the venues they can't use because this town is so big. Apparently they have multiple venues options available to them. So she helps them pull it together for the dance, all while trying to keep tabs on what's happening back in New York with Renee's wedding. Now, I haven't really mentioned it, but Jessica's colleague, Rebecca, is gunning for Jessica's job. We saw her in the very beginning because she was making passive-aggressive comments to Jessica about the wedding and how it was going. And she even made her own candy canes because that's something people do. She's like, yeah, my homemade candy canes. I was like, who the hell makes candy canes? Because that's candy making. That's, you know, you gotta like boil the syrup and then like shape the... I'm like, that's why professional candy makers make candy canes. The home chef does not make candy canes. But she had a whole cup of homemade candy canes, humble bragging, and then, of course, the passive-aggressive insults she was lobbing at Jessica. So then, while Jessica's away, she is also trying to insert herself into this wedding because it is such a big deal. To the point where she actually shows up at Renee's house just to drop something off, and she's like, oh yeah, you know, I really hope Jessica's gonna get back in time for the wedding. And now the bride's like, Renee's like, wait, you don't think she's gonna be back? So she starts to panic. So it's like Rebecca, not only is she gunning for her job and trying to like make Jessica look bad, now she's upsetting the bride like 4 days before her wedding just so she can insert herself into the situation. I'm like, you know what, I think as any wedding planner goes, it's like, that's the last thing you do. You do not upset the bride unnecessarily, but she did it deliberately just so she could get into this. So I really can't stand Rebecca, but I hate all that kind of like passive aggressive anyways. It's like, if you're gonna come after someone, just do it openly. Don't snide comments. Ugh. I can't stand those kind of people. But anyway, so now Renee's starting to freak out. She's trying to get a hold of Jessica, who's in Alaska with spotty reception, and she's too busy doing her princess responsibilities to take the call. So it's the day of the big dance, and Matt asks her to go with him. Of course, she doesn't have a dress, but Matt's cousin loans her one of hers, which it's a very practical red dress. It's exactly the kind of red dress you would expect someone in Alaska to loan to someone for a festival dance. Like, I have nothing against the dress itself. In fact, like, every time I looked at it, I'm like, this is exactly the kind of dress my mother would wear. But for Hallmark, it's not the kind of dresses you're used to seeing on Hallmark movies, because it's very simple. It's very middle-aged woman. There's nothing appealing about this dress at all. It's not even particularly flattering. Like, I don't remember the actress's name, but she's a very beautiful woman. And this dress was doing her no favors. I mean, at least the color was nice on her, but that was it. I'm like, they couldn't even gotten in like a... But anyways, it fit with the plot, so I shouldn't complain. I would have liked something prettier. So I'm coming for you because the dresses aren't pretty enough. I come after you if they're not pretty enough, and I come after you if they're too pretty for the situation that they're used in. So basically, there's no pleasing me. Hallmark, there's no pleasing me. So they're at the dance. They're having a moment dancing. And I'm going to be honest with you. The actor playing Matt is very, very attractive. And there's something about him that several times I was like, ooh, oh man. Wow, this is certain looks he gave. I was just like, all right. I looked up his name, but now I've already forgotten. It was something Ronnie Rao. I was definitely feeling him. Because there's this one scene when they were setting up for the dance where he like helps her in the back room, and it was very nice.
Oh.
Here you go.
Thank you.
No problem.
Oh.
I mean, so not only was he like really sexy, but I was like, that was really sweet. Like, it was such a sweet moment, and that he was helpful and very kind. And then later when they're actually dancing at the dance, just the way he's looking at her, it just gets my heart fluttering.
I'm the one that should be thanking you
For what?
for bringing a little Christmas spirit to my week.
Well, you know.
then for the tradition, they write a wish on a Jingle Bell flower and then put it like in a little jar. And the way they had them all arranged, they were in these Christmas tree like shelves, and then they had each of the little jars of flowers, and it was beautiful. Like, Jesse says, oh, look how beautiful that is. And I'm like, yes, it is. I agree with you. That is gorgeous.
I don't think I've ever seen anything quite so beautiful.
Yeah, me too.
So the dance is wrapping up, and Jessie gets a call from work, from her boss, basically saying, oh, hey, if you're not, because you haven't left yet, I'm now giving this account over to Rebecca. Because Rebecca went to the boss and was like, I don't think she's got a hold of this. I don't think she can handle it. I think I better take it over. And the boss was like, all right. So, yeah. So now Jessica is just crushed because here she is. It's like, I think it's Christmas Eve. I think this dance is on Christmas Eve. So I didn't think that when I first watched it, but after seeing the last scene and now thinking back, I think this is Christmas Eve. So it's Christmas Eve. She's not with her family. She's in the middle of Alaska, nowhere, can't get out. Or at least it's closer to Christmas. Maybe not, because then she flies out the next day, and that's obviously not Christmas Day. So maybe it's 2 days before Christmas. And she's like, I've sacrificed all this time for this account, and now I've lost it. And this was like 20 minutes before they move in, and I'm like, this is the conflict. This is the conflict at the, near the end of the movie. And it's not between the two leads. It's not this, and it's like we have been seeing Rebecca, meddling this entire time. So this was not a surprise at all. And we'd seen her boss question her like, are you going to be able to get back in time? So this was an expected conflict. So I was really happy. I'm like, I had my notes. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's actually work related and not between the two leads. And then Matten comes and finds her. So she's explaining like, oh my God, I've sacrificed so much for this one job. And she's like, and now I've lost it all. And he made some comment and she's like, you don't understand it, storms off. And I'm like, oh, maybe it is between the two of them. Spoke too soon. But then he immediately goes and talks to the pilot and figures out a way to fly her out that night. Because he had gotten the part in and he told her, he's like, hey, I'll be able to fly you out in the morning. But he goes and finds the pilot, organizes so that they can fly her out that night. So his Aunt Mary goes and finds her. She's like, pack your stuff, you're leaving right now. And so it was barely a fight. So like she stormed off and he's like, all right, I can fix this. And he did. And she immediately is like, you're the best, you're awesome. So it really was that work conflict. And I was like, and the fact that she's going back to New York and he's in Alaska. So that really worked. I was so happy that we didn't have this sort of artificially produced, manufactured conflict in order to create conflict. It all worked out and it was great and it wasn't between the two leads and I loved it. I loved how that worked. So I was very happy. And then she gets back to New York, shows up when Rebecca's like talking to her boss and she's like, oh, I can help out with that. But like, I guess she doesn't. She like makes a comment like, oh, you should do this. And they're like, oh, you're back. And she's like, yep. And then she just leaves again because she's got family plans. So now I think it's Christmas Eve because her family's having a big party that really she wasn't going to be able to make because of the job, not because of Alaska. Like she really wasn't even going to go originally. But now, she's remembered the meaning of family while she was in Alaska. So she has all her gifts. So she actually had bought these Jingle Bell necklaces at the Jingle Bell Festival that are beautiful. I really love the Jingle Bell necklaces. Those were gorgeous.
All right, thanks.
Hi. Let me know if you need any help. Oh, yeah, thank you. Those are Jingle Bell flower pendants.
Right. Snowflake or candy cane?
Snowflake.
All right.
For her sister and niece, and her sister had gotten her a snowflake necklace, similar to what their mom used to wear. So she gets to celebrate Christmas Eve or Christmas with her family. And it's all beautiful and meaningful. And then flash forward like 2 or 3 days or something. I don't remember how long. They never tell you. That's why. It's never really clear. That's why I was so confused about the timeline and when Christmas was in relation to when the wedding was and where she was at any of this time. But it's the wedding. And so Rebecca's in charge of it, so she's not involved at all. But then she shows up just as the bride's like getting ready to walk down the aisle, and then hands her the Jingle Bell flower bouquet. So of course Renee just loses her mind, because the reason why she had chosen it in the first place is because it had a family sentimental reason, like it was her grandmother's wedding or something that had these flowers. So, but she hadn't known that, and she'd found an album like 8 days before the wedding and discovered this, so that's why she'd wanted them last minute. So now she's like crying and get ready to get married because she's got her bouquet that she longed for. She's like, thank you so much, and just like, I promised you that I would make sure that this day went off perfectly, and I'm glad I was able to do this. And so then she leaves the wedding, and of course, who does she run into but Matt? So Matt was only staying in Alaska. He actually was there, I think it was for like a year and a half, 2 years or something, because his uncle had died, so he was helping his aunt with the farm. But he lived in New York, and he realized this is, I probably should stop hiding in Alaska and come back to New York. And then he's in a peacoat, and she makes a comment, and he's like, well, when in New York. And that was actually really funny. So then they kiss, and we assume happily ever after. A couple of things that I didn't mention that I wanted to touch on that I thought just amusing scenes. So at one point during the festival, they're doing snow angels, and Matt makes this big, huge deal about finding the perfect canvas, because you gotta find fresh, unbroken snow to do a perfect snow angel. And so they're finding it, and they fall down, and they do the snow angels, and then the camera, which had been looking them low, like ground level, and see them making it, then came up and shot from above, which you can do if you're in a field of fresh, unbroken snow where someone's making a snow angel. If you are in a place where it appears you have shoveled snow into a field in order to make it snowy enough in order to film a snow angel scene, don't do it from above, because it was obvious. I was like, well, that's terrible. What? I'm like, why didn't you just stay low? We would have never known.
Do we just, yeah.
No, not yet. We got to look for the perfect canvas.
Okay, where did you do it last year?
Oh, okay, here.
Oh, this is the spot?
Yeah. All right, go ahead. All right.
Though props to them, because I think that's real snow. That looks legit like real snow, not that fake snow they use in movies. Like, that looked like real snow, the way it was sticking to them and the way they were moving in it. I think they actually used real snow. Same thing in, like, when the truck got stuck in the snow. That looked like real snow. There were a couple of different characters too in Alaska. So we had Matt's Aunt Mary and then his cousin Amanda. So the two of them were pretty funny. Like when we first meet Aunt Mary, they're in like the greenhouse tending to the jingle bells when the mayor bursts in and is like, hey, someone's gonna pay for the music for the festival if you guys would willing to give up some jingle bells. And they're playing Christmas music, and she's like, does that help the flowers grow? And Aunt Mary's like, I believe it does. And Matt's like, I think she's like singing along to the Christmas music. And I'm like, yes, I'm here for that, Aunt Mary. I love that. And I'm like, she should just own it. Don't pretend like you're doing it for the flowers. Admit it. You like listening to Christmas music. And besides, it's like a handful of days before Christmas. It's totally acceptable. I mean, if you're standing there singing along to Christmas music in August, then yeah, I can see trying to pass it off and hide it as it's good for the flowers. But if you just want to jam out to some Christmas tunes, own it. I was doing that yesterday. So I get it. And his cousin Amanda, oh my gosh, so funny. So they're in the kitchen, and she's like, so how's your love life going? And I'm like, what?
So, Jessica's next. When's the last time you went out on a date?
3 months ago, you set it up.
Oh, I remember that.
The town has 112 people in it. Who the hell is he dating? I mean, like, again, you take out like the quarter of the people who are elderly and a quarter of the people who are children, under 18 or so. That leaves like, what, 50 people? And then you think about 3/4 of those people have to probably be or at least a lot of them are probably married because they're part of those, you know, producing those small children. So it's like who's he dating? What are the odds? Like, who? And I mean, I don't know much about Alaska. I've never been to Alaska. I keep talking like I know what I'm talking about, but I've never been to Alaska. I know about snow because I live in New England, and I know about cold and small towns, but I've never been to Alaska. But as far as I know, at least what I've heard, is that it is population-wise way more men than women. So I'm thinking, I'm like, who is he dating in Alaska? But I'm sure there's at least one single woman. Well, we know the mayor's single because she ends up hooking up with the pilot Jack under some mistletoe in the Jingle Bell dance. So, but there you go. There's you know, the one of two available women in town now off the market. Dating, especially for someone who's like in Alaska hiding from love. I'm like, that's a great place to go. A town of 112 people if you don't want to date anymore, or don't want to be involved in a relationship. Ideal. Oh, I forgot to add. There was one scene where Matt takes Jessica out to see the Northern Lights. So they're sitting on the back of his pickup watching the lights, and it was very romantic. I liked it. It was cute. But I did notice the lighting director's commitment to the Northern Lights. So we're just looking at them. We know they're in some sort of like studio or whatever. Sit on the back of this truck, and the lights that were shining on them kept slowly changing colors from like blue to green to blue to green to make it look like they were actually sitting under Northern Lights that were changing.
The Aurora Borealis.
All right, let's get you up here. Wow.
So I did notice that, and I did want to comment on it, that I noticed that. So well done. And that was all my notes about this movie. Overall, Jingle Bell Bride, I thought it was great. Good, strong start to the holiday season, Hallmark. I am going to try and rank all of the movies this year. So far, this movie is number 1. This is the only one I've seen. But it's a strong one. Like, I don't know if the actors had chemistry. I know I definitely was feeling something from Matt, but I don't know if they quite melded all the way. But it was enough that I wasn't repulsed by it, so that's fine. Not everyone's always going to have full-on chemistry, and that's fine. So I'm not upset about it. But the plot of this movie was actually good. I mean, obviously you got to throw away the whole business about her flying to Alaska and expecting to be back within 20 hours. That was ridiculous. But the problems she was having with work and having it be more career difficulties versus created emotional ones, I like that. It flowed smoothly and made it interesting to watch, and I wasn't mad at it, because normally about that 20 minutes from the end I get very mad and annoyed and want to turn it off, but I wanted to see what happened. So yep, a strong start. I'm looking forward to watching the next one, so I'll do that shortly and get that posted. Excellent. Well, should I say it? I guess it's okay, because we're in November, so it works. Happy holidays. Well, actually, I have one more note that's not related to the movie, so maybe I'll just tack it onto this end. But during the movie, there was a commercial. Now, unfortunately, the commercial was for Hobby Lobby. I hate Hobby Lobby. I hate businesses that claim religion in order to mistreat their employees. They're basically weaponizing a religion that is supposed to be all about love and caring. And that makes me very angry, and I refuse to shop there and spend any money on them. But their commercial during the movie was excellent. I actually thought it was going to be a Hallmark commercial. I thought it was going to be a Hallmark commercial because it hit all the right notes and had all the right feels. But sadly, it was not. See, wasn't that so good? That's right in Hallmark's wheelhouse, right? I totally thought that was gonna be a Hallmark commercial. But yeah, so Hobby Lobby. I shouldn't mention their name at all. I don't want to give them any business.